not really sure why, but for the last 2 weeks, the YouTube hasn't liked any of the videos I tried posting. The first one, I think it was because I was showed the raw pork belly that I was working with. And the second one, I'm not 100% sure why, but a few of the clips that I put in it were not supported by the platform. Not really understanding why. But I will show you what I did for the last couple of weeks because I did make my goal of preserving two things and putting something in the freezer for a meal. Unfortunately, both those meals were already used because I'm unfortunately at that point of, well, I don't have enough room in my freezer. I don't have enough room in my pantry. And I don't have enough room in my pantry because I'm actually almost out of jars. I need to order my Azure standard order soon. So, which is not really a bad problem to have, but now it's, well, that was my challenge, was to put more in there, and now I'm not using it, so gotta rethink that a little bit. But anyway, I made that bacon. Next time, for me to remember for next year, or next time I try doing this, I'm gonna, I only had about 1 cup of brown sugar in this, but I'm still gonna cut that sweetness and add some more heat, like the Cholula sauce or Tabasco. But I'm also gonna add a lot more of my blackberry rub. The flavor didn't come out as much as I would like, but I think the cherry chips that I used to smoke it kind of overtook that flavor. We made that, about 10 pounds of that. These are 1 pack each. These are in my freezer, which is actually, for, I think it was like $40 at Costco for the pork belly. That's not a bad deal. Because like the 1 pound packs that you can get at the grocery store are like $15 each right now. Then we made butter and we made bread and we made cakes and stuff, but then those are already gone. We did can some relish and some peach scrap jelly in a couple different sizes because I was running out of jars. And I also did the maple, pineapple, and chive carrots. One thing for next time, because they're not bad as a side dish, but next time, larger chunks of carrots, because the smaller bits just kind of melt in your mouth and you're just like, did I actually take a bite of that or not? But yeah, not bad. I'm gonna try a different flavor later because I still have quite a bit more carrots coming in from the garden, but I'm gonna use a whole bunch of them today for a chicken pot pie.
All right, as I kind of chop up these carrots and onions pretty roughly, nothing too specific about that, let me just explain my thought process on this recipe. So, trying to keep in mind that this is for my family, they're not really going to care what steps and special notes go into this. That more than likely, if I'm lucky, it's just going to end up on a plate mixed together with some ketchup on top. That's so most of the stuff is just going to be for me. Like the carrots, these specific carrots I like for the pop of color, but because they also hold on to that firm texture of a carrot a lot longer during the cooking process in comparison to the orange Nantes carrots that you get from the grocery store. And I grew these carrots, so it was a little bit more special to me. I believe these were the dragon tongue ones from Baker Creek. Some of them have like the orange core, some have the yellow core. And I did change my mind about peeling most of them just because I just didn't like how much the peeler was taking off. So I just figured, you know what? Oh, well, I'm just going to chop them up. The rest of my vegetables that are going to be in here are going to be mostly green, so why not? On the back burner, there is the kettle and fire bone broth. I need that to get heated up because when I get to that point of the process where I need to add it to the hot roux, I need to try to avoid the flour clumps, and I want everything to kind of thicken evenly in the process because it is going to be a semi-doubled batch. At the end of this, I did end up making 2 extra chicken pot pie casserole pseudo mix things and put them in the freezer for future dishes. So you'll see that at the end. I ended up getting frustrated with the dough because I bought puff pastry dough, but I was also kind of like in a mess at the end of the day. I'll explain that a little bit later. Why did I want to make this dish today? So we finally kind of got our glimpse into the wet season that we get, just kind of like a gentle reminder from Mother Nature that it's time to start thinking about preparing our house and our animals for the cold and wet season. Just trying to get some of the maintenance done around the places. as well as preparing for when we don't have power with the cold and rainy weather. We'll probably end up losing some trees again, like we do every year. It was just kind of that rainy, gloomy time. We actually were woke up to this morning to a flash flood warning simply because our land has been so dry and that it's just not absorbing that water very well. But we fortunately have a creek that runs through our properties, so it just kind of took care of most of that issue for me. Um, so yeah, I figured this was going to be kind of a hearty meal to come home to with after working out all day outside and just kind of getting everything done, kind of like just something I could just pop in the oven for an hour. But you'll see how that goes later.
Yeah, we're gonna turn that down. For the dogs.
Once those vegetables get into the pot and soften just a little bit, I will add a couple sprigs of thyme and some bay leaves. And one other little kind of shortcut that I had for this dish, because I don't have any chicken in the freezer right now, I bought one of those bags of pre-prepped Costco rotisserie chicken that I'm going to add to this dish as well. I'm just going to like hand shred that a little bit more and chop it up into some more pieces. And then once the vegetables kind of get a lot softer and I have started to kind of like stick to the bottom, I'm going to deglaze that with a little bit of white wine and let that wine cook down just about completely before I add in the flour for the roux. All right, now that that wine deglaze has kind of cooked out just about 90% and there's a little bit of liquid at the bottom of the pan, I'll start with about half a cup of all purpose flour and mix that in with the vegetables to kind of create like a hot paste. That's what we do with, as we call a roux. And then once it kind of sticks to the bottom of the pan, with 1 cup at a time, I'll add that hot broth, continuing to stir it into that flour mixed and vegetable mixture until I'm kind of confident that there's not going to be any flour clumps and kind of inconsistencies. I want everything to kind of mix well and be even. I want things to thicken to that point where it's like a pre gravy texture, but not that gravy flavor, when you get like those awkward clumps of flour. So once I get to that point, I will just dump the rest of that chicken broth into the mix. All right, once all that broth was kind of settled in there, I just kind of mix it in and let it kind of heat up to temperature and let it do what it would do naturally to thicken with that flour mixture in there before I added the rest of the vegetables that were kind of semi frozen and adding that extra moisture content. So, with that, I did take the time to fish out the thyme sprigs and the bay leaves. I know that if I didn't, my family would have kind of complained if they found that in their bowl. Oh no, like it's the end of the world. One thing I did end up doing differently was I did use a bag of broccoli from my freezer that I had left over, and I just chopped it up into some extra small pieces. I know that I was going to add a lot of extra moisture content. I feel like if I didn't add that this time, that base for the pot pie would have been a lot thicker, but I'm totally okay with it. It's just for my family. We don't mind. It's probably just no one's going to really notice here. So I did add about half a cup to a cup of heavy cream to kind of give it that texture of the pot pie heartiness and let that kind of settle in there and mix in there before I added the chicken and peas and broccoli and some fresh parsley. I do regret not chopping up extra fine the parsley though, because once it was finally cooked, I decided I didn't like that much parsley in it. And that's all I was finding in it. So, a little bit here in a moment, you'll probably see I thought I was only going to be making 2 pies. Well, I ended up making 3 pies total out of this batch, 2 for the freezer and 1 for us to have tonight.
It's gonna have to be 2 pies, I think, which is totally fine. It smells good. Now, if you've noticed, I haven't added any salt or pepper because I didn't want to season it until the end, because since I didn't cook the chicken and I don't know how much salt was in those broths that I use, I didn't want to over salt it. Man. Alright, I'm gonna add a couple splashes of Cholula just to get a little bit of a heat. And I did put salt and pepper in here just a little bit because I know everybody's gonna add salt and pepper to their plate anyway. I'm gonna turn the heat off because I'm just gonna let that mix and let it cool down a little bit before I put it in the fridge to cool down. So I want to add cold filling to cold tops to cold pan.
All right, and oh my gosh. So the end of the night was a little bit kind of chaotic, and I had completely forgotten to bring out the puff pastry dough that I had bought to kind of thaw out from the freezer. And you can see me get super frustrated. I was frustrated all day during work outside in the rain and having to do horse chores. It was just like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about my dinner plan. So I had prepped all this stuff earlier in the day and set it in the fridge to kind of solidify. And I did end up making 3 pies from this. The 2 for the freezer, I ended up using that puff pastry from the store for anyway, but for tonight's dinner, and I kind of wish I would have made it for at least one of those other pies as the tater tot topping as well. But I, you can see, I just completely like crumpled up that puff pastry and said, I'm done. I'm so done. I'm going to make this as a pseudo pot pie and top it with tater tots because they're just going to put ketchup on it anyway. They're not going to notice. So, with that, I ended up baking it at about 425 for about an hour, and it turned out pretty good in that stoneware. It was pretty bubbly, and that those tater tots were actually a pretty good crust. I know that with the pot pie crust that I buy from Costco, for the chicken pot pies, they tend to be pretty thick and salty and don't really have much of a flavor with them. Whereas with this puff pastry and the tater tots, I feel like the way that I would have seasoned it for the freezer, it would turn out fine. And then tonight, those tater tots actually absorbed a lot of the flavor from the pot pie, which was kind of nice to have. But anyway, yeah, it turned out pretty good for tonight, and I was kind of proud of myself. And I put 2 in the freezer for when the next rainy day comes. When we just want to have something easy to pull out from the freezer. So that's that. Enjoy my chaotic. I was so frustrated. Like, I was flustered and frustrated, and I was just like, forget it, I am done. Oh man, how embarrassing.
Don't even care. I do not care.
Oh my gosh. I just know that future me is going to be so ticked off at past me because of the way that I prep those for the freezer. I would put those in with like a lid so that the cooking instructions are a little bit neater, but I also don't intend for those to stay in the freezer for more than a couple of weeks to a couple of months because we're just going to end up getting through it really fast, especially if this weather kind of holds out for like the pre-fall. With that, with me being so frustrated with in the kitchen and the weather kind of like matching my mood, it kind of like reminded me that I'm not only cooking for myself and it's for my own family, and a piece of my family is currently not here. And that's part of the reason why I'm frustrated because my best friend is currently away and they would always step in as my kitchen assistant just about every night that they could. And they would always make it better. If I'm frustrated, it would help me come up with a different plan, different way to solve something I'm missing of an ingredient, try new flavors, things like that, and it would just be a lot of a better experience, and I would just kind of get past that frustration a lot better. But that place setting is missing and a piece of me is missing. So if they ever come home and see these videos, which I'm not sure that they will, I hope that they know how much that they were missed through this time that they're gone. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my chaotic kitchen-ness, and I hope that YouTube actually lets me post this, but I do need to figure out what to do for the rest of the month as I am kind of limited on space. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great weekend and have a great week. Thanks for watching. Bye!